Welcome to End of Life Conversations and Reflections. Today, my guest is Dr. Arun Garg. Welcome, Dr. Garg. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Dr. Garg. He is an award-winning champion of culturally efficient and effective holistic healthcare for the populations. He's a clinical professor of laboratory medicine and pathology at the Faculty of Medicine at UBC. For 30 years, he was a medical director at Fraser Health in the Department of Medical Biochemistry and Lab Medicine, and now a consultant practice of biochemical medicine. Among his many accomplishments and contributions to our society, in 2008, the Vancouver Sun listed him as one of the 100 most influential Indo-Canadians in the province. Dr. Garg received an honorary doctorate from BCIT in 2010, and in 2011, he received the BCMA's inaugural Don Rix Leadership Award. In 2017, Royal Columbian Hospital Foundation awarded him the Philanthropic Champion Award. To promote stronger links between Canada and India, Dr. Garg conceptualized and co-chaired a Canada-India Network Initiative on cardiovascular health. And he also founded the Canada-India Network Society to build a strong economic, trade, educational, and cultural links between Canada and India. With his innovative and holistic, as well as integrative approach, Dr. Garg is a change maker with heart. I'm so delighted to have you here today. And I understand you recently became a grandfather, so congratulations to you and Lori on becoming new grandparents.
Thank you, Zara. Thank you for that kind introduction. It was long,
But honestly, that doesn't capture everything you've done. It's just a little snippet of
well, you have synthesized it, and obviously I appreciate. Thank you very much, and I'm delighted to be with you. And I really feel the topic you are working on is so much needed. That conversation around end of life, quality of life. Uh, what we talk about life a lot, but
yes,
we never talk about death.
right.
And I think that's the balance. It's all about balance. So I'm really delighted to be part of it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this must be a conversation that no one's ever asked you to have on camera before. So I really appreciate it. It's not easy to get people to commit to this conversation. And so thank you for paving the way for making these conversations a little bit easier. I do like to start, from childhood. I like to ask people what their experiences were around death and dying when they were young, and what was their understanding in childhood around death and dying and experiences related to that.
Yeah, sorry, your voice is cutting in and out. Could you just speak a little louder?
So my question was, when you were growing up,
Yeah.
were there any end of life experiences that stand out for you? What were your understandings around death and dying?
Thank you for asking that. It's a very deep question for me as it happens to be because death happened in a very personal way very early in my life. Uh, I was about 5 years old when all of a sudden my father was taken away. He was killed, and so here you are, all alive and everything, and bingo, 5 years old. The message is he's no more. So death has been very real to us in the family from very early on. It made it real, and it's part of life. And for my mother as a single mom to raise us with that deep commitment of raising four kids, and go from being at the top of the world to nowhere, and then so death for me personally essentially is very real, and it I live it every day, so to speak.
So sorry to hear about that, Dr. Garg. I don't know if anyone or many people know that about your experience.
No, this is not something I share that often or common,
Yeah.
but because you ask, it's very real. It's very real, and what real is being then raised in a very positive environment of turning that into, and the influence my mother had on my upbringing and her deep belief. And I still remember very well, very vividly, the trauma and the deep fear and sense of commitment at one hand, but other hand, loneliness for my mom and
Right.
how she coped. So it influenced a great deal, no doubt about it. Looking back,
Yeah.
I now relate to it, um, but because of her deep affection, love, and commitment to positive and most important belief in spirituality and her God, and so she instilled those things, and I think that made it that now that was in 1951, 51. So a
Well,
lot of years behind.
I'm just curious, like, it's already difficult for single mom, but then to be a widow to try and raise kids, like, was there any cultural challenges around that? And was it, I would imagine it would be extremely difficult, or was the community very supportive because she was now a widow with 4 children? Sometimes you hear these stories about widows being treated quite differently in India. So I'm just wondering, like, what that was like, and do you remember anything that was particularly related to culture or religion around that?
Yeah, I would say it's all related to her spirituality and her deep belief and the religion she believed in, but most important, who she was. And I might take this opportunity to start by acknowledging what she did and what she made of me. So I mean, I can't just say enough about it.
Yeah,
No doubt about it. And in my years now, that's what I reflect on and I kind of get energy from.
yeah,
And she was a very spiritual person, she was a very religious person.
yeah,
She was a daughter of a very renowned academic, but she didn't have much formal education, but she was way ahead of anybody I know. And then obviously the Hindu Vedic philosophy and culture, which she believed in, which we believe in, has very much of a family tradition. So then you become support system was there of the family, but she was very clear from day one, and I still remember that. Yes, we don't have much now. We don't have this. But don't worry. It will look look after others. So she really did not accept any financial from anybody. She said you have to stand on your own 2 feet. Even
right.
though there was a lot of love and a lot of support from everybody,
Mhm.
and I still remember those things as very profound effect on me.
Yeah,
And I can say to you, and I can say to publicly on record, I believe I am what I am because of my mother and how she raised me, and
yeah,
obviously the role my sister played. And in latter years, once I came to Canada, my wife. So I say jokingly, 3 ladies have made me what I am.
absolutely. They all sound like phenomenal women. And just going back to the topic around when your dad died, were there any religious and or cultural practices that you did to help with the grieving process that are part of your context at the time? And for us, from where I come from, the grieving period is sort of 40 days, where you're praying for the soul, because there's this belief around that being appropriate time for the grieving. I actually don't know the real reason for it, to be very honest, but 40 days is what we allow um, formally for the grieving to occur within a religious context. So I'm just curious if there was anything around that that helped you get through your grieving process that was, yeah, that you remember.
Yeah, I would say, thinking on it, the biggest thing happened to me and through my mother is she kept my father's memory alive through both cultural context, but religious context. So the only thing I heard very early on that yes, physically he's gone,
Yeah.
but spiritually he is with us. So
Okay.
that notion of Atma and Paramatma in Vedic philosophy was very alive, and then notion of that you lose physical body, but you never die. You're always with you. So that kind of connection, and
Yeah.
then obviously there are a lot of rituals in Sanatan Dharma, Vedic philosophy, Hindu Dharma, which are performed pretty well on a daily basis. You live it, but then there are certain dates which you recognize and honor. So put it all that in together, I would say she kept him alive for me through those cultural practices, and
Right.
they are very real for me even today.
That's beautiful. I'm just curious, like, so because of the, they're saying that, the person's body is gone, but their spirit, atma, whatever you refer to it as, is still around. Have you ever had an experience where you had that feeling that your dad was around, or a spirit or soul was around you? Um, I mean, sometimes people say, I like had a visitation from my father or my mother, after they died. So I'm just curious, have you ever had an experience like that? Or is it just an understanding that he's walking with you still in this lifetime, but, through another modality or another realm or another energy field?
Uh, no, I can't say that I have experienced any additional spirituality through this. To me, uh, he was very real. What it did do for me was uh, commitment to myself that I will live a good life and try to fulfill his dream, which he had. And that, so I kind of translated more that into practical living things rather than not, I would think.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
as a matter of fact, that's one of the reason I left India was to fulfill his desire, which was unfulfilled because as a very, very bright academic person, he was a principal of a college at the age of 26. He wrote about 12 books.
Wow.
His PhD thesis was published as a textbook, the first textbook on the stock exchange of India. So
Wow.
those things were more real to me about him rather than not. And one of the things was because he was so brilliant and he was so bright, the gold medalist all the way through, uh, that he was going to go to London School of Economics for postdoc.
Oh,
But
wow.
for family reasons, he decided not to go. So then he was killed. So then there was this overarching hang in the house that he didn't fulfill going overseas. So
Okay.
that was my kind of fire to do. So that's the
Yeah.
reason I left India to pursue doctorate in philosophy and biochemistry in 1965.
You were quite young when you left India.
Yeah, I was relatively young. Yes,
Uh,
I think 19 years of age. Yeah,
wow. So
on
he
my own,
influenced.
yeah, on my own solo, just like this. Today in Agra, never left Agra, the tropics of India,
Yeah.
and 48 hours later, in the cold, cold weather of Saskatchewan, quite a transformation.
Wow. So his influence has been with you throughout your lifetime.
Yeah, so I think you have to speak a little closer to the microphone,
Sorry.
Jara. Um,
So, yeah, I was just saying his influence has been with you throughout your lifetime, because it motivated you to do all the things you've done with your life as well.
Yeah, I would say sometimes I think of that and I say, why, why all this?
Yeah.
And this is that what we call um, inner shakti, the inner courage,
Mhm.
to be engaged and to do what needs to be done. I would say yes. This talking of end of life, but more important is spirituality of relationship,
Yeah.
there is something there. At least certainly I'm the living proof of it. And a
Absolutely.
lot of it came from my mother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think she passed away in 1995 after having raised four kids, but she lives with us all the time, and I think in our conversation on end of life, uh, the other thing is, and I should say this right up front, very clearly, there is no one answer. There is no one say this is what is right, you know.
Right.
I have come to understanding and a belief that everyone has to find their own way,
Yeah.
and they have to find their way according to their context,
Right.
and this has to work for them. Uh, it worked for me what I have, but that doesn't mean it's right for anybody else. Even
Yeah.
in our family, we have three brothers, and all three are very different.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I would say that would be my key message today
Mhm.
in terms of life and death, and that whatever it is, because as human beings, we have been very fortunate to given cortical thinking, which is
Mhm.
a little bit more advanced than everybody else in terms of animal kingdom. And
Yeah.
I think we need to use that, but use it what works for you.
Yeah.
Not because somebody says so, not because you're Hindu, not because you're Christian, not because you're this or that. And celebrate diversity, celebrate plurality, but be firm in what you believe in.
Yeah.
I would say Mahatma Gandhi, for me, put it best when he said that I want the winds of different cultures to come through the windows in my house, but I do not want them to blow me away.
Wow.
I'm paraphrasing it. It's not the
Mhm.
exact words he used, but the visualization I have that a man is standing in a house with 10 windows open, with the wind coming, and he's facing it, experiencing it, but he's firmly planted in the center with his feet firm. So that's the image I've lived with in this context.
Absolutely beautiful. I love that image too. I think I'm going to carry that forward from this conversation. I was also like curious, like this pandemic, from the start of the pandemic, uh, we've all thought about death and dying a little bit more. And it's also changed the way people obviously are supported in their end of life journey because they can't be together for the rites and rituals and ceremonies that they usually would partake in. And I mean, for me, during at the beginning of the pandemic, and still, I feel like I'm thinking more about death and dying, and I'm trying to think about this life and think about this physical realm as a finite thing, even more so than ever before. And what makes me really sad is that those cultural things that you need to help you with your grief, you don't have that support, and you're kind of having to navigate it by yourself. So around the pandemic and death and dying and living and trying to live and survive it,
Yeah.
what do you think? What comes up for you when I mention death and dying and pandemic? Do you think that the way you look at life has shifted, the way you look at death has shifted because of what we've been through in the last year?
Yeah, that's a deep question. It's a deep question. Um, but to share with you very personal how I look at it, or how it affects me, and it might be related to who I am, what my experience has been. I don't worry or think much about death. What I worry and think more is what it's doing now. So, COVID or pandemic, the way it has affected me most is, yeah, it's a very dangerous thing. It's a very serious thing. It's a thing we have no control on.
Yeah,
So, what can I do to overcome those things? Having said that, I accept death as part of it because, having said what I said earlier about having experienced death so early, it has a very different meaning. It's not fear of death, And I have been a practicing Vedic Sanatan Dharmi all my life. That's my strength, belief system. But I've been on search what it means,
Mm-hmm.
even though I know that what I am, but what did it really mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been kind of searching that. And after many years, and last 10 years, when I established this Canada India Network Society and had the opportunity to travel, I ran into some books, or so had an exposure, and those books kind of formed this for me. And of all that huge body of knowledge Vedic philosophy has. And it's a philosophy, it's a practice, it's a principle. We don't get hung up in religion piece. And I think I have come to that understanding myself. But the piece I want to mention in our context today is the book called Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavad Gita, I would say, is the essence of a lot of these issues. And death is a very big part of that narrative when Bhagavan Krishna talking to Arjun, because he is so paralyzed about death, about killing, and then his narrative of what that is and what it means. I think it makes it very clear that death is just a part of life. And
Right.
one of the very big, beautiful paragraph he has, shlokas they call them, and if I could share, I don't have the Hindi translation, but I'll paraphrase it.
Sure.
Essentially, as within the body resides Atma, the inner being, which never dies. It's the body which perishes, and then that particular energy seeks different things. So it's always traveling. So the paraphrase Bhagavan Krishna gives is, it's like men changing clothes.
Mm-hmm.
So every day you wear new clothes and you get rid of the old clothes, and that's how this life and death is. And if you have that kind of context or that kind of thinking, it makes a lot of sense. But as I said earlier, you have to have that thinking. It's not for everybody. You
Yeah.
have to be prepared, but it makes sense in that context.
And so I guess when you're saying that, it makes me feel like that means there's no finality, there's just continuation. Perhaps would you say that that is kind of related? I'm going to push it a little. I don't know if it's a bit much to discuss in this short time frame, but are you maybe alluding to reincarnation, or is that completely different?
Again, as I said, it has to be personal interpretation.
Okay.
And personal interpretation means you have to understand. Everyone comes at it at a different level of interpretation, different level of understanding.
Yeah.
And being a scientist I can't get rid of that. I'm a PhD, MD, fellowship holder, 40 years of practice. So I can't get rid of that. And
Yeah.
in that context, I'm still struggling with the notion of reincarnation. I realize it's one of the basic tenets of Vedic philosophy, but I do see where I have come is I do see better understanding of human body, and human body is more than just the organs of which we are very familiar with.
Yeah.
So the physical body.
Right.
So physical body is within wrapped up in other bodies, so to speak. And the influence of energy, universal energy, is huge. But I think as far as I go today, Zara. I haven't quite translated yet in reincarnation.
Well, I just love to get your perspective and where you are on your journey around that. I'm just curious, like for your end of life journey, what would be your hopes around that? And what do you hope happens to you after you die? Which you've alluded to, but I'm just trying to now summarize what we've talked about. So your end of life wishes, what do you envision?
Yeah,
And what would you hope?
I think see, because I left India very early on, and because I was firmly wrapped in Vedic philosophy, but greatly influenced by Western thinking.
Yeah.
I love Western scholars. I love what West has attained in the last 300 years, the Industrial Revolution, the science, the evidence, understanding. Because before that, there were a lot of fear of everything, fear of unknown in the name, and that gets tied into power and politics. So, setting all that aside, I would say that my own lens on life now is, and this is quite relevant in today's conversation because climate change, the nature, the balance with nature is very hot. And I think the West is struggling with the demand of destruction of nature through climate. So I would say continuation is projecting on next generation. So I would say my perspective is, um, do whatever I may, but not do anything to harm for next generation.
Right.
And now recently, as you know, we were blessed with a grandson. So I think that has totally kind of realized and kind of made it real for me that that's what I am. So all the work I'm engaged now is really is uh, to healthy living, healthy lifestyle, healthy society, but not so much about uh, uh, afterlife, but life in here, but next generation.
Right.
So I see that as reincarnation, if you want.
Oh, wow. That's a very interesting perspective.
Yeah, it's a different perspective.
Yeah.
But as I said before I started this conversation, you have to interpret the way you want to interpret because it has to work for you.
Absolutely.
You have to believe what that is, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm not preaching or I'm not saying this to anybody, but
Yeah.
I'm just sharing with you for dialogue.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's what these conversations are about, are people's perspectives, their individual journeys. And there is no right or wrong way, which is what I guess what I'm trying to demonstrate is we can still have conversations even if we don't believe in the same things.
Yeah.
So I'm going to push that question one more time around what do you think is going to happen to you after you die?
Excuse
Just
me.
your belief around it. What do you believe or hope?
Yeah, uh, to be uh, true to myself, I haven't thought of that. My journey hasn't taken me yet because whatever I do with a lot of gusto. So I
Yeah.
have to understand it, right? And so right now, I am in the midst of understanding Bhagavad Gita. So I'm reading, listening, attending workshops,
Wow.
and every time I read, I'm getting new ideas, you know. And that particular is interesting. That particular notion does not play very big in Bhagavad Gita either, uh, except to say that if you do it right, maybe you will not go through the cycle of life so different, and you will get moksha. But I would say, I have to say, I just don't know where I am personally on that.
Do you hope you connect back with your parents in that realm? Like, a lot of people say, I hope I see my family members because I would think we're all connected somehow, and it's not just for this lifetime. That's
Yeah,
my hope. So
yeah,
uh,
that's a good question. That's a good observation. Obviously, both my mom and dad, especially my dad, has been a guiding force spiritually for me. So even though he's physically not with me, he is with me, and everything kind of have that lens with me. I see through that. So he is alive for me in that way. So in a way, I am connected with him now.
yes,
Now, whether there was something different where physically we will connect, I just don't know. But to me, more important is be connected with that spirit, with that spirituality, with that action now in this life. and I think I am connected.
That's
Definitely, I'm connected.
so let's not wait till we die to connect. We could connect in this lifetime. It's not, maybe there isn't a like a I would say it's a people think, oh, you die and then, but maybe it's just a continuity, but in a different way. In a way that, like you said, it's not in the physical, but that the
Yeah,
person,
I would say that's how I'm landing in my interpretation, because as I started this journey, the yogic philosophy of Patanjali and his eight limbs, and there are a lot of conversations about samadhi, tyagi, sannyas, moksha, and I find more comfort in all those interpretations in what's happening now,
yeah,
rather than if I do this, I will become that,
yeah.
And again, it's how it works for me rather than right or wrong.
Yeah, because when you say that, I think about how a lot of people, some people function in that they want to just do certain things because they think of the notion of hell. And so that's what drives their good deeds or them not doing something bad. Whereas you're saying, I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is what am I doing here and now? But a lot of people are like, if you go back to religious foundations, some of them are around heaven and hell, and that's what drives people to do certain actions in this lifetime. So
Yeah,
it's fear based, I would say. And you're saying no, it's not about the fear. It's just around. You're not really worried about that at this point. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think you have to look after the present in that sense. Like hell and heaven is in some ways right here too. If
Yeah.
as a student, my big thing was when I was a student to make sure I passed those exams.
Hmm.
That's pretty hell or heaven. Then if you pass the exam, I mean, it's a different connotation.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
uh, and yes, I think this fear of unknown, of especially in the context of spirituality, I don't see it. I don't see the evidence. I don't. I'm a very evidence-based scientist,
Yes.
but a great belief in this universal energy or spirituality. So I see myself as a very small dot in a very big universe, as a
Mhm.
part of that.
Yeah. Well, your perspectives have been so interesting, Dr. Garg. Thank you so much for like taking the time to have this conversation with me. Before we end, is there anything else you would like to share about yourself, about your journey, your perspective? We just have a couple minutes left.
No, I think thank you very much for the opportunity. I enjoyed it, but my uh, my purpose now and my strong interest is how to make our healthcare system better,
Yeah,
how to make our present healthcare system as it exists now, how to make it more sustainable, how
right.
to make it more accountable, how to make sure that healthcare is available to everyone, how to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do. So
Right.
on that one, that's my kind of passion right now,
Yeah.
and I see a real need to integrate the wisdom of ancient Vedic philosophy of holistic approach to
Yeah.
consider person as a whole,
Right.
to a reductive approach, a biomedical model of Western thought. And it's not either or,
Yes.
absolutely not either or, but it is, and they're two different paths. That's the other thing. I thought they were similar paths. No, no, they're very different paths, but we need both of them.
Yeah.
And the understanding of that difference and then making it work. I'm very happy that the movement COVID, you were talking about COVID, has
Mhm.
opened that door for many, many people.
Yeah.
And there is a lot more conversation taking place on that. I was just this morning talking to the professor of psychiatry at Harvard,
Uh,
and he has taken a great interest in this. So we are hoping that we could do some work together,
yeah.
uh, essentially understanding the ancient Vedic philosophy as it's seen for health, applying it in the modern times along with Western reductive knowledge and working together. So it's a side by side, and we need both.
Yeah.
So that will be my main message: balance, and we need both, and respect for plurality and diversity.
Really powerful messages, Dr. Garg. Thank you so much. I look forward to the work you're going to embark on. And I will follow your journey and stay connected. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm hoping you'll join us because you're doing such a good work on palliative care, and I'd like to have that voices from the trenches on palliative care. As you know, with Dr. Sutcliffe, we are working on two world, and so I think there is some common elements here in our work and your work and your work and our work. So
Love to.
let's keep it together.
Absolutely. I look forward to that. Thank you so much, Dr. Garg.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and good luck with this new program of yours.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.